You were never meant to fit in. And deep down, you knew that. Even before the world told you how to dress, how to act, what to suppress, and what to chase. There was always something inside you that whispered, "This isn't who I am." You watched the world from behind invisible glass. While others laughed effortlessly, you analyzed every movement, every word, every silence. You saw meaning in things no one else noticed. You felt the unspoken, the repressed, the wounds others hid behind plastic smiles. You learned how to play the part, the mask, the smile, the laugh at the right moment. But beneath it all, there was a silence, an ache, a haunting feeling that you were living someone else's life, wearing someone else's skin. And perhaps the most painful part, no one ever told you that being different wasn't a flaw. It was a calling. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But the path to becoming that person is often paved in isolation, darkness, and the unraveling of everything you were taught to be." So if you've always felt like you didn't belong here, if your emotions have always run deeper, your thoughts stranger, your pain louder, you're not broken. You're awakening. And this journey is not a punishment. It's an initiation. This is where we begin. From the earliest years of your life, the world started shaping you. You were born whole, soft, open, pure potential. But very quickly, you learned which parts of you were acceptable and which ones weren't. Maybe it wasn't said outright. Maybe it was a glance, a change in tone, a withdrawal of affection. But the message was clear. Be less sensitive. Be less loud. Be less curious. Be less yo. And so you adapted. You trimmed parts of your soul just to feel safe. This is what Carl Jung called the formation of the persona, the mask we wear to meet the demands of the outer world. You became who you needed to be to survive. But there was a cost. Every time you silenced your emotions, you buried a truth. Every time you forced a smile, you distanced yourself from your real essence. Every time you pretended not to care, you abandoned the child inside who felt everything. Over time, that mask became your identity. But the soul remembers. It never forgets who you really are. And so, in the quiet hours, your insomnia, in your overthinking, in the emptiness you can't explain, the real you tries to speak. You start to feel split, as if you're living two lives. The one everyone sees, and the one you carry in silence. Jung believed that this split is the beginning of suffering. That when we exile parts of ourselves, we create what he called the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche where everything rejected, shamed, or feared is buried. And the more sensitive, intuitive, and emotionally intelligent you were as a child, the more of yourself you likely had to hide. That's why you've always felt different, because you were. You were awake in a sleeping world, and now the buried parts of you are starting to stir. What you exiled does not die, it waits. The shadow is not a monster. It is the child you once were, still crying in the dark. It is the rage you swallowed, the grief you denied, the joy you were told to suppress. It is the brilliance that made others uncomfortable, the depth that others couldn't understand, the authenticity that others called too much. And the more you tried to be normal, the louder it grew beneath the surface. That silent scream, that shame that clings to your joy, that ache you can't name, that's your shadow. Carl Jung didn't believe the shadow was evil. He believed it was essential, not to be destroyed but integrated, not to be fought but faced. And that's terrifying, because facing your shadow means confronting the parts of you you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The shame, the jealousy, the resentment, the guilt, but also the power, the creativity, the passion, the sacred chaos that never found a home. You see, the shadow doesn't just hold your wounds. It holds your brilliance too. It holds everything you've ever disowned. So if you've always felt different, it's because you are carrying more within you. More pain, yes, but also more truth, more insight, more beauty that hasn't yet been allowed to shine. The shadow grows stronger in silence. When you pretend you're fine, when you play small to keep others comfortable, when you betray your intuition just to be accepted, it whispers, "There's more to you than this." And when you ignore that voice long enough, the shadow begins to act out. Through anxiety, through numbness, through self-sabotage, toxic relationships, unexplained anger, emotional shutdowns, because the shadow will do whatever it takes to be seen. This is why so many spiritually gifted, emotionally attuned, and highly intuitive people suffer. You weren't born to conform. You were born to transform. But transformation requires fire. It requires the courage to descend into the underworld of your own psyche. To meet your fears not as enemies but as messages. To hold your wounds not with judgment but with compassion. To say, I will no longer run. This is shadow work. And it's not a trend. It's a sacred return to the parts of you that remember who you really are. Now pause. Feel what's rising. That tightness in your chest. That lump in your throat. That part of you that wants to look away or maybe cry or maybe scream. That's not weakness. That's contact. You're making contact with yourself. Because here's the truth you've always sensed. You feel different because you are. You feel everything. Deeper than most. It's not just sadness you feel, it's oceans. It's not just anxiety. It's the tremor of a soul that knows something is off. Even when everything looks fine. You pick up on tension in the room before a word is spoken. You notice the cracks in people's voices. You sense who is wearing a mask, even when their smile is perfect. And you've worn that same mask for years. You've had to smile through your pain, nod through your numbness, explain your silence as just tired. But behind that mask is a world of color, of feeling, of dreams you were too afraid to say out loud, a world of pain you learned to hide because you were told it was too much. So you learned to shrink. You learned to overthink every word you said. You learned to anticipate other people's needs while abandoning your own. You learned to be the strong one, the smart one, the quiet one. But secretly you longed to be held, to be seen, to be understood without having to explain everything. And yet, that rarely came, so you made yourself small. You called it maturity. You called it independence. But really, it was emotional survival. You became addicted to being the one who holds it all together. And somewhere in that you lost the right to fall apart. But the pain never left. It just found new disguises. Perfectionism, procrastination, people-pleasing, isolation. And even in the moments where everything looked okay, you knew something was off. You couldn't name it, but you felt it. A kind of ache, a kind of absence, a kind of homesickness, not for a place, but for a feeling you couldn't describe. That feeling? That longing? It's the soul calling itself back home. And now you're starting to listen. Carl Jung didn't want you to become someone else. He wanted you to remember who you were before the world told you to forget. He believed that true healing doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from reconnecting with what's been buried, the ancient parts of you, the strange parts, the sensitive, intuitive, powerful parts that were never truly gone, just exiled. And this is where Jung's work becomes more than theory. It becomes a mirror, a map. Because what you're feeling, that quiet desperation, that sense that you're not fully living, that something is missing, that you're meant for something more, Jung would say that's your soul awakening, not a breakdown, not failure, but a sacred invitation. So Jung believed in a process called individuation. It's the journey of becoming your whole self, not just the version you show the world, but the totality of you, your light and your shadow, your logic and your feeling, your rage, your beauty, your sadness, your insight, all of it. It's not about chasing happiness. It's about becoming real. And that's why you've always felt different, because you weren't born to stay asleep. You were born to evolve. But evolution hurts, because it means shedding old skins, leaving behind identities that once kept you safe. It means stepping into uncertainty, even when your hands are shaking. It means being honest with yourself, that maybe the job, the relationships, the routines you built were never really yours. They were masks. And now, they're cracking. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So much of your pain isn't random. It's a signal. A sign that something inside is begging to be seen. The insomnia, the overthinking, the loneliness in a crowded room. The feeling of watching your life happen from a distance. These aren't malfunctions. They're messages. Whispers from the parts of you that were never meant to be silenced. They're trying to bring you back to your core, back to your fire, back to the truth you knew before the world told you who to be. You feel different because you are. Not broken, not wrong, just deeper, more awake, more honest. And while it might feel lonely at times, it's also sacred. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you taste freedom, you can't go back to pretending. Once you hear the soul's voice, the noise of the world starts to fade. You start choosing differently, speaking differently, living differently. And slowly, you begin to remember. This feeling of not fitting in, it wasn't a curse. It was a compass. So now what? What do you do with all this awareness, this ache, this truth, this depth you've carried for so long? You begin the reclamation. You start calling your pieces back home. The parts of you that learned to be small, quiet, agreeable. The parts that laughed when you wanted to cry. That apologized for existing. That twisted yourself into something digestible just to be loved. One by one you gather them. Not with force, not with shame, but with reverence. Because you're not here to erase. Your past, you're here to reclaim. Your power from it. You begin to ask new questions. What have I abandoned to be accepted? What have I tolerated to avoid being alone? Who did I become just to survive? And slowly, you begin to remember. That sensitivity you hated? It was never weakness, it was radar. It let you see through people, feel what others missed. Hear the emotions behind words. That overthinking you cursed? It was the mind trying to protect you. Trying to make sense of a world that never felt safe enough to just be in. That isolation you resented? It was sacred space. So you could hear your own voice again without the noise. Reclamation doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means peeling away the false layers. The layers built from fear, approval, trauma, culture, survival. And what's underneath? Stillness, strength. A clarity you forgot you had. A voice that doesn't beg to be heard but speaks with quiet conviction. You start to say, no without guilt. Yes without fear. I don't know without shame. You let people leave if they only loved your mask. You let old identities fall away. You stop chasing validation like oxygen, because for the first time, you're breathing in your own truth, and you realize you never needed to be fixed. You just needed to be found by you. This is what Jung called the return to self. It's not a destination. It's a deep homecoming, not to the person you were told to be, but to the one you were before you learned to hide. The quiet child, the wild dreamer, the old soul. The one who always felt like too much when really, you were always just enough. So if you feel lost right now, good, because it means you're no longer willing to stay asleep. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're finally waking up. And the you that's waking up is whole, is worthy, is wildly alive. You are not here to fit in. You are here to remember who you are. And that remembrance, that reclamation, that's the revolution. So now take a breath. Not the shallow one you've been surviving on, but a real breath. A breath that says, I'm here, and I'm not abandoning myself anymore. Because everything you felt, every moment of confusion, every ache, every sense that you didn't belong, it wasn't proof that you were broken. It was proof that you were awake in a world that forgot how to feel. And yes, awakening hurts. It burns, it isolates, it strips away illusions. But it also reveals something sacred. You were never meant to fit in, because you were meant to remember. You were meant to carry the light into the dark, to question the rules, to feel deeply, to see what others look away from, to rebuild your life not from performance but from presence. So here's your reminder. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to shrink to be safe. You don't have to become someone else to be loved. The most revolutionary thing you can do is become yourself, unapologetically, tenderly, radically. And it won't be easy. There will be days when the old you tries to come back, when the mask feels tempting, when you'll crave the comfort of invisibility. But now you know too much. You've seen your shadow. You've heard your truth. You've felt your soul stir beneath the silence. You can't go back. You can only go deeper. So go. Go reclaim your voice. Go grieve the years you betrayed yourself. Go fall in love with your own mind, your own depth, your own strangeness. You are not alone. There are others like you feeling too much, thinking too deeply, breaking the mold silently in the background. We are not lost. We are the ones who remember. Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And now you are awakening. Keep going. We need your light.